So we got a bunch of stuff printed out in front of us, Michael.
Yes, we do.
We got some data,
Yeah.
some numbers. You like that?
I love numbers.
We got 3 sheets here. We got April 2017 stats printed out 5 years ago. Then we've got April 21 last year and April 22, which is, of course, this year. So I think first off, what makes the most sense is we just kind of compare this April versus last April in terms of the stats you would want to know, like the amount of closings.
What's the most shocking stat on the 2022 April list? What number did you see on there and go, wow, really?
Initially seeing that there were fewer cash closings now versus last year's April.
Oh, yeah.
I expect it to be a little more.
That is interesting. Less cash today. Why do you think that is?
It looks like a lot of those people who probably could do cash are using a conventional loan because that number shot way up versus last year.
All right, so how many closings in cash do we have in 2022 or April of 2022?
Yeah, so April 2022, we've got 20 cash closings of the 124 closings the whole month. So 16% were cash. We've got 62 conventional closings. That accounts for 50% of the closings. Last April, that looked more like 27 cash closings of the 118 total, so 22%. So it's a little higher.
Yeah.
But there were only 40 conventional loan closings, so 34%. So that shot up from 34% to 50.
Yeah. So one of the things that I saw when we looked at these numbers that helps explain that 6% drop from last year to this year as far as number of cash closings or percentage of cash closings. Sold median price last year, 183. Median sold price this year, 240.
Got to have a little bit more cash, don't you?
There's a big difference in cash there when we're talking about 180 to 240. That's a heck of a jump there. What is that percentage? 180, 240.
Here he goes with the
60.
mental math.
Man, that's a 30% jump year over year.
So it looks like those people who maybe could have paid cash last year now just maybe did a conventional loan with a lot down or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to buy let's just play it out. You're going to buy an investment property for $120,000. You may have, if you're a big timer, if you're a baller, then you may have $120,000 in a stock market account or something.
You're a baller, right?
That you can go find that money and put it down, right? You may have equity in your house because house prices have gone up so much. So now you've got this big chunk of equity. It takes a much bigger chunk to get to 240. So you may end up having to finance that. So,
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was a decrease in FHA closings this year versus last year. Last year, 31% FHA. This year, 24%. I would say that's a notable dip there.
That's huge. Yeah. Before we started recording, you said it felt like every buyer I worked with in 2017 was an FHA buyer. So what are stats from 2017 FHA? How many of those?
April 2017, there were 93 closings.
93 total.
Yeah,
So
93 total closings. And the percentage of those that were FHA, 37%. So
huge difference between today at 24%.
yeah, that was my primary buyer back then. Nowadays, not nearly as common.
Yeah.
And a lot harder, too, because you're up against all these conventional guys and cash guys.
Yeah, I think they're probably still there. They're just losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not winning the bids because it's hard to compete with cash and conventional.
And the question on the listing side, the amount of agents who will reach out and say, hey, would you even consider FHA?
Right.
That used to not ever get asked.
Yeah, and now that's a common question. Here's a great example of FHA versus conventional. In an FHA appraisal, the appraiser has to look in the attic to see if there's adequate insulation. Conventional never goes in the attic. Just doesn't happen. On an FHA, the home must have at least 18 inches of crawl space if it's not on a poured slab. So he's got to look in the crawl space and see what's in there. Conventional, they don't even open the crawl space door. Don't care. So as a seller, you think, okay, well, there's two more opportunities for me to not be able to sell the house or to take less for selling my house or to have to put more money into selling my house. So a seller is motivated to take a conventional loan, which is, a less risky deal for them. So that's why they shy away from FHA.
Yeah. Other than how much money am I going to get from this sale, the second main concern is how likely are we to actually get there.
That's right.
So,
yeah, I want the most amount of money in the fastest time, and FHA appraisals can slow that down. Yeah, and lead to not as much money for sure. Another thing that people probably don't realize, but an FHA appraisal stays with your house for 120 days. So check me on the number. It might be 90 days now, but when I was a mortgage broker many moons ago, the FHA appraisal stayed with the house for 120 days. So if for some reason that appraisal came in low, too bad. You're stuck with that appraisal if you sell it to anybody that buys FHA for the next 120 days. So, if you already know that you're at the top of the market and you're pricing your house at the very tip top of your neighborhood, you're less motivated taking FHA because once that thing happens, everybody sees it.
Yeah, on the selling side, that's definitely a disadvantage. On the buying side, though,
It's protection.
Yeah. Yeah, it's things have gone in my buyer's favor before because of that.
Yeah, sometimes it works in your favor. Most of the time, though, based on these numbers we're looking at, you've got at least 66% of the time you're not going to get that opportunity. So if you can qualify for conventional, it's probably the right way to go.
One thing I did think was interesting, too, is the amount of VA closings. Pretty much all of these months, it's stayed consistent. April 2017, there were only 7. There were 7 in 21. 5 in 22.
Yeah, there's probably just not that many here, and the VA loan is a good loan and it's popular for a veteran. So I understand why it's there. It's 100% financing, so you don't have to worry about coming up with down payment. That's obviously a huge hurdle, and there's no mortgage insurance on top of it. So that's another cost that you don't have to bear. But at the same time, the VA loans can be expensive. They can be a little tougher to get from a appraisal standpoint. They can be a little tougher to get from just a value standpoint. And now you can argue the value, and there are ways around getting the value up. The veteran has to write a letter that says, hey, I understand that this appraisal came in short, but here's why I think it's worth X. And that carries more weight than in the regular world. If just a buyer or seller wrote an underwriter and said, I think the house is worth that, nobody cares.
Right.
In the veterans world, that letter actually does make a difference. So that is helpful, but it's still, a VA appraisal is a little tougher to get. The appraisals take a little longer. So back to that point of sellers wanting the money the fastest, they know VA usually takes a little longer to get that appraisal back.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for our area anyway.
And then once again, it goes to the fact that we have multiple offers pretty consistently, and it's just so easy to immediately shuffle that one to the bottom without, much consideration.
The big takeaway when I look at these numbers, I told you earlier in the morning when we were pulling these numbers that I thought the number of sales would be lower in April of this year than they were last year. They're not. We still had an increase. 118 sales last year in April, 124 this year in April. So the trend line's still going up. The most shocking stat on this sheet that I asked you about earlier, to me, it's 9 days. Median days on market, 9 days. That's insane to me.
2017?
40 or 39, sorry.
Yeah. And the median sales price, $127,000.
Yeah.
The good old days.
I wish we could find a house for $127,000 today.
Oh, they're out there. You just don't want it.
They are hard to find, for sure.
They are no longer livable.
Well,
some of them.
Yeah, it depends on how you define livable, I guess. But yeah, it's such a drastic difference in 5 years. April 2017, 39 days on market, which is really not that long. Like 39 days is pretty much a seller's market, right? But now it's 9, so it's 1/4 of what it was in 2017. You put your house on the market and you price it anywhere close to what the data shows, you're under contract in less than 2 weeks. Wow.
And today, if it takes 39 days, the seller is, what's wrong?
Yeah.
There's something
Oh,
wrong.
yeah. Well,
And there is something wrong.
yeah, probably because it should be 9.
Yeah.
I think those days on market, I'm going to make a little prediction here for quarter 2. April is the beginning of quarter 2. I think it goes over 9 days from here. I don't think it goes under.
For sure.
Yeah. I think we have longer days on market. Price per square foot, median price per square foot is $143 on this sheet. Over or under 143 for all of Q2 when we come back and do this in July. So April, May, June, those 3 months, is the price higher per square foot or lower?
I think it might still go up.
Yeah.
I think so. But then the one that I'm more confident in is the days on market, just for the fact that I feel like the interest rates doing what they're doing. They've shot up. I wrote those down as well. April 21, they were kind of hovering around 3% for the majority of the month, and today they're 5.25%. That's a big old difference.
That is huge.
So shrinking down that pool, the people who were kind of on the border of getting that $200,000 house, they might they might not be able to now.
Yeah, that's hundreds of dollars difference when you're talking about a $300,000 house.
Yeah. So
And
I
the
think they'll
median
just
is
sit longer.
median is 240 in April of 22. So for the entire month or the entire quarter of Q2, over under 240 median sale price.
Oh, still up just barely though.
Okay, over 240.
Just barely. Are you taking the under?
No, I'm not taking the under on 240. I think it's probably over. I think price per square foot is probably over. I think days on market is slightly higher. So I think the only trend kind of going in the buyer's favor is that days on market. I think it's going to go higher from here. And to your point, I think interest rates are going to be locked in the sixes some point in Q2. And so I think that's going to cause us to see the days on market start to trend up a little bit. And we typically have more listings in the spring and summer. So we should see more listings, and that will cause days on market to be a little longer. Yeah, it just takes more time to go see 5 houses instead of 1.
And one thing we were talking about earlier is, although the interest rates right now are around that 5.25 range, a lot of the people who have closed recently, they locked in, before that happened. So this isn't really taken into account that increase. So I think that's what we'll see whenever we have this conversation again.
Yeah, that's true. These people that closed in April locked in February or March. So they still got some of those lower rates. And so, one of the guys on our team locked a rate in at 4.25 back in, it was in March. And he did a 90-day lock. So he's locked till June. So we'll still see a little bit of those 4s showing up in the rest of the quarter. But by the time the end of the quarter gets here, that June number, there won't be many of those 4s. There will mostly be 5s.
Yeah.
Which leads to another problem. So if you bought a house last year and you're in the 3s, it's going to be really tough for you to list your house and decide to move, because now you've got that 3% interest rate.
Yeah.
That is something you're going to want to hold on to forever. Anybody that bought in 20, 21, and 22 before April, they're going to feel really good about their interest rate. It's going to be hard for them to go look at another house, pay an extra $75,000 for that house, and their payments still be the same because of that interest rate. So we may have a little bit of slowing down as far as just inventory coming on the market, because people are going to be trapped in that interest rate environment of, I can't sell this house. So what may happen is we may create a few more accidental landlords, like, hey, I'm going to keep it because it's only 3%. My payment's $900 a month, and I can rent it for $1,800. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that's a thought I've had.
Yeah. How about that? All right. Any other thing we need to cover?
I think we pretty much hit everything. I think there's quite a bit to take away from here, though.
Yeah.
Definitely. I enjoyed looking at all this.
That's it.
Signing off.